Good break with me, your man, Louie T. Welcome. This is LouieTeeNetwork exclusive, limited series, The Reign of Terror, chronicling the 23 years of pure hell Daniel Snyder has put this fan base through. Of course, I'm your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So we are now on chapter 21, which lands us in the 2019 season, and what an awful season it was. I think there have been, and I've stated this already, there have been three rock bottoms that we've hit during the Snyder era. There was 09, there was 13, and then there was 2019. All right. So each and every single time we either thought we were going to hit rock bottom or we either did, Snyder usually pulled a rabbit out of his hat. 14 didn't necessarily qualify as pulling a rabbit out of your hat, getting Jay Gruden, but I mean, what else were we going to do? Nobody wanted the job at that time. So, amazingly enough, Gruden was the first coach to get to a second contract under Dan Snyder, which is not a surprise when you look at his tenure and how impatient he was and, you know, how he ran his operation. Shouldn't be surprised that the one guy that was a yes man outside of Jim Zorn was the guy that hung around the longest. Similar to Jason Garrett in Dallas, right? You have an owner who wants full control, and you get a guy that's a puppet and a figurehead as a head coach, and you're winning football games. You keep him around as long as you can because you're still in control. Well, that control pretty much ran its course in 19, heading into that season. So let's set the table. 18 was a disaster after the injury to Alex Smith. They trade for Alex Smith after Kirk Cousins leaves in free agency. We start the season off 6-3, but you could see that season felt like a house of cards. When we played against any team with offensive prowess, we got dumped on. Whether it was the New Orleans Drew Brees porn night game, Atlanta coming to FedEx Field and shitting all over us, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers dynamically scoring 3 points, but yet putting up 500 yards of total offense. Had they just not imploded, they would have scored probably 30 on our defense. You could see where the season was heading. So unless Alex Smith, and I think a lot of us had gotten to the point with Alex by the time he got injured that this was a nickel and dime offense, which all of us knew. And we had all been saying, look, don't expect to be having a lot of explosive plays and shots down the field. Chris Thompson's going to be very busy. It's going to be a nickel and dime offense. We're going to have to scratch and claw our way to 23 points, sort of where we are now as an offense, or have been at least for the last 3 years or so. So it was very frustrating. Needless to say, you lose the final 7 out of 9 games, you lose the final 7 out of 8 games. I think, what was it? We were 6-3. So you lose including that Texans game, because we were 6-2 heading into that game. So you lose the last 7 out of 9, as I said, and you finish up the season at 7-9. So it would have been 7. You lost your final 7 out of 8, and you finish up the season at 6 out of 8 rather, and you finish up the season at 7-9. Or final 6 out of 7. God, my math is terrible. We finished up the season losing 6 out of our final 7. You finished up the season at 7-9, and it felt like changes needed to be made, sweeping changes. I wanted Bruce. We had long wanted Bruce gone, and I thought 18 was the season to do it. And here is this clown, the prince of picnic pants and picnics, talking about we're close. We're close. Close to what? He had talked about us being close the last 2 years in 17, when we knew that season was going nowhere fast because Kirk was going to be gone. He talked about us being close in 18 when Alex Smith got hurt. Even if Alex stays healthy, I'm still not sure that season turns out to be good. We don't lose 6 out of our final 7, though. I can assure you of that. But I don't know if we make the playoffs that year because our defense sucked and Alex wasn't good enough offensively to put up enough points to offset the fact that our defense sucked. So close to what exactly? I wanted everybody gone. I wanted Greg Minuski, the defensive coordinator, gone. I wanted Jay Gruden gone as head coach. I wanted Bruce Allen gone as team president / GM. I wanted the house cleaned, and they brought the entire gang back in 2019. And anybody that had a set of eyes saw the setup that was coming for Jay Gruden. The first 5 games of the season read like a murderer's row list of opponents that we just weren't going to be able to handle outside of Chicago. So the first 5 games, and we talked about this ad nauseum that offseason, the first 5 games of the season, Philly to start on the road, Dallas at home in week 2, Monday Night Football, Chicago Bears week 3 at home, on the road to the Giants week 4, and then finally week 5, you've got a date with the New England Patriots at home. And so the only game in there that was winnable in our eyes was home for Chicago on a Monday night. You don't beat them, Jay's starting 0-5 and he's fired. And it felt like they were setting him up for disaster. They go out and get Case Keenum to be our starting quarterback, and it was an offseason that it just reeked of desperation, not on the part of Jay, but on the part of Bruce Allen to try to save his job. And it just wasn't going to happen. So we get to the draft, and all the stories came out about how draft night day 1 went in 2019. So all year long, your scouts, your front office people are putting together, their draft board. You do that at the end of the process. They're collecting all of this data, all of this information that you're using to set your draft board. And they'd come to a consensus. Washington, with a 7-9 record, obviously you're going to end up somewhere in the middle of the first round. Did we need a quarterback? Yeah, Alex Smith just snapped his leg into 15 million pieces. Probably going to need a quarterback. And so Washington wasn't necessarily in the best position to take one. This wasn't the strongest draft either, as the NFL would show. Kyler Murray was at the top of this draft in 2019, and then really there weren't any other quarterbacks that really knocked your socks off. There was Daniel Jones, Dwayne Haskins, Drew Lock, but none of those guys really, knocked your socks off. I was a Drew Lock guy personally myself. So was Jay Gruden, but even that wasn't going to necessarily put you in a position to, ascend in the league right away, obviously. But Jay was worried about saving his job. So at 15 overall, Jay wasn't concerned with selecting a quarterback. He wanted a player that was going to come in here. And remember, we're at the point now, Jay wanted to keep Preston Smith. He was let go in this offseason heading into 2019. Preston Smith was allowed to leave. He signed with the Green Bay Packers and promptly put up 13.5 sacks. Jay was pissed off. He wanted to keep him. And this is where you can see the wheels starting to fall off of this thing, because now Jay's getting vocal. We also had the whole Jay Gruden, video of him smoking. There were rumors as to where this was taken, what was happening. So there was that in the offseason of 2019. There was a lot going on with this team, and Jay was on the chopping block. Jay was getting frustrated. He saw that, and you know what is one of the saddest things to watch as a fan of sports? There is no sport where the pressure is greater on its coaches, head coach in particular, than in football. Basketball, you have a staff, and as you eat, they eat, and so it's tough if you get canned because all of these guys now have to find work. But it's a small fraternity in the NBA, and guys usually find work, and they'll get taken care of. In Major League Baseball, it's 162 games, much like the NBA. Hey, you get another chance to do it tomorrow. Don't worry about it. All right? Or you'll get another chance to do it in a couple nights. Football, you plan all week long for one opportunity to show that what you've done all week wasn't in vain. And if you don't get it done, and you're on the chopping block, you're on the hot seat, the pressure mounts and you can see it on a coach's face. And watching Jay that year, Jay's happy-go-lucky. Jay's this, go along to get along guy. He's always smiling. We always talk about Jay as being the guy you go and get a beer with, and share a couple of laughs with. Jay's a good dude, man. Jay looked stressed. Jay looked like he had the weight of the world on his shoulders. And losing players like Preston Smith, not having control over the draft, and what your guys want to select was really, really taking its toll on Jay. And it all came to a head in the 2019 draft. Jay wanted no parts of taking a quarterback in the first round. I don't know if he was on board with Daniel Jones. That was the rumor that was surfacing, that Washington was interested in Jones. Maybe it was just a smoke screen or whatever the case may be. I know Drew Lock was a guy that Jay was interested in at one point. But Daniel Snyder reportedly came into the draft room, pretty much told those guys, I know what you've been doing all year. That's cool. I don't give a shit. I'm Daniel Snyder. We're taking Dwayne Haskins. And I think that was the last straw for Jay, in terms of this job and understanding what's going on. He realized that the writing's on the wall. Now, they did circle back to appease Jay and all the draft scouts and people that had been working closely to try to make this thing go off without a hitch. They did double back, trade away their second-round pick to Indy in 19 and in 20 for the rights to come back into the first round, and they selected Montez Sweat. So you got Dwayne Haskins, Montez Sweat. Third round was Terry McLaurin, which was a huge pickup. We didn't know at the time, but he'd be the crown jewel of that draft, maybe along with Sweat. We'll see. But right now, Terry is one of the best at his position in the league, and that kind of value you generally don't get out of a third rounder. You also had players in that draft. Bryce Love, we'll talk about that here in a second. You had Jimmy Moreland was a seventh rounder in that draft. Cole Holcomb was a fifth rounder in that draft. I really feel like the 2018 draft and the 2019 draft, we really started, and this is what happens when there's a deficit in talent. I really felt like we started attaching ourselves to players that weren't all that great. And we built them up to be something that they probably weren't, but because we didn't have any talent, we were really looking for something to hold on to. And so there are a lot of players at the back end of these drafts, 18 and 19 and so forth, maybe even 17 as well, where you look like Sean Dion Hamilton, for instance. I mean, we were hanging on to him, hoping he turned out to be something, and of course he did. I think Jimmy Moreland is the greatest example of that. The people's corner. He comes in preseason, kills it, earns a roster spot as a seventh round pick. And people just never let go of the notion that Jimmy Moreland was going to be this top flight corner that was going to be a steal in the seventh round out of James Madison. And that's the kind of shit that we did. We attached ourselves to players like that. Steven Sims Jr. making the team as an undrafted wide receiver. And we attached ourselves to him. Right? And we tried to build him up in 2020. We had him as our number 2 receiver. Like, that's blasphemy. Right? That's the kind of shit we were doing. Jordan Brailford was in that 19 draft, and we were hoping he'd turn out to be something as a 7th round pick, out of Oklahoma State. Right? Like, this is the shit we were doing, man. We were attaching ourselves to players that really didn't have a bright future in the NFL, but you couldn't tell us anything in those days. So, you go to the season and Jay's a dead man walking, and we had already identified that those first 5 games was almost like the NFL trying to put him out of his misery. And in the preseason, it's crazy because Terry never played in the preseason. He got like a tailbone injury, and I think that was just Jay's excuse to keep him on bubble wrap so that no one could actually see what this guy was capable of and then unleash him in week 1. And it worked to perfection. We came out in that week 1 game against Philadelphia, and we jumped those boys, right? Like, we got Carson Wentz problems at the time, and, we struggled with him. And when I tell you we came out like gangbusters, Terry has an early touchdown over the top, beats a future Redskin, and Ronald Darby cooks him over the top for a touchdown. Which was a surprise to us. We knew he could run. We thought he was going to be a special teams player. Jay told us, hey, this Terry McLaurin kid, watch out. But Terry comes out, blazes him on that first touchdown. We haven't seen speed like that in Washington in quite some time, probably since Deshaun Jackson left us in 2016. So needless to say, we're excited. Yeah, Paul Richardson was supposed to be fast. We haven't seen P. Rich really at all since he got here. He's been injured. So we were excited to see Terry run. Touchdown. Vernon Davis has a big catch and run. You know, jumping over dudes, turning back the clock. We jumped these boys. We're up probably 21, I think, to 3 at one point. We're dominating them. And then it might have been like 17 to 3, or I think it was 21 to 7 or something like that. Either way, Deshaun Jackson gets loose. He's back in Philly now. And he gets loose for a deep ball right before the half. I don't know what the hell they were thinking and why they allowed that to happen. But he gets loose for a deep ball touchdown before halftime, and then another one after halftime. And just like that, you were leading. Now you're trailing in the game, and such is life. We go on with, and you know, last ditch effort to keep them at bay. Terry gets loose again for a deep ball, which would have been another touchdown. And Case Keenum overshoots him. You know, I bring this up all the time. Overshoots him by every bit of 4 yards. And you're just saying, you stinking ass bastard. Wouldn't be the last time I would say that about Case Keenum in 2019, but we knew what we were getting ourselves into. He wasn't going to save us. So we lose that game. The next week, you're at home, Dallas. I didn't think we had a prayer in that game. But we actually came out and we fought. We were leading at the halftime break. I thought the Cowboys got away with some calls there. You know, they called us for a holding penalty. It wasn't bogus. It was really holding. But then they got away with a holding penalty, you know, of their own that allowed them to score a touchdown. It was bullshit. Anyway, you know, they just had too much. They were too talented and we weren't. And we had Case Keenum. They had Dak Prescott, you know, and that was that, you know. And so they get us. I think we let a guy with Devin Smith, the former Jet, got over the top on us in that game. Like he hit us for like 2 deep balls in that game. I'm like, man, we so trash. But I didn't realize we were going to be one of the worst Redskin teams in franchise history that year. I hadn't realized that yet. I knew going into the season we were going to suck. I didn't know how bad, but I was going to find out pretty soon. So then you get to the Monday night game, and this is the one you got to win if you're watching. You have to win this game if you're not going to start 0-5 and Jay get fired. And you get to that Monday night game, we're at home, and Case Keenum tries to quarterback sneak the ball on a 4th down by putting the ball over the sticks as if he's in the end zone, and once the ball crosses, the play's over. No, Case, if you do that in the field of play and somebody knocks it out of your hand, it's still a fumble, buddy. So Case Keenum, trying to get a quarterback sneak, jumps over the top, extends the ball. The Bears knock it out of his damn hand, pick that bitch up and run for a touchdown, I think. And at that point, I was like, this shit is comical. I'm over this. We suck. And so now, here comes the chance of, man, put Dwayne Haskins in. Why are we watching Case Keenum? He stinks, right? So we get to the following week. We lose to the Bears on Monday night. They beat us up good. And you're 0-3 at this point. You go to the Meadowlands. This is a house of horrors. You already know what it is. And Eli Manning is not playing well. Or excuse me, it was Daniel Jones. It was the battle of the first rounders, right? Because Daniel Jones did not play well in that game. And I think we either picked him off 2 or 3 times in that ball game. However, Case Keenum stunk it up in the first half. And Jay elected to bench him. Now, Jay used the excuse of Case Keenum being injured. I think that was Jay's way, and he was rebelling at this point. Jay knew he was getting fired. And so Jay started doing petty shit on the way out, like, hey, so y'all want to see Dwayne? You want me to put him in the game? You think he's ready? I'm telling y'all he ain't shit. Okay, don't worry about it. Case, you're out. Dwayne, get in there. And Dwayne promptly comes in. Is absolutely horrible. We can't even get play calls in. We got 2 or 3 delayed games. We waste timeouts. Dwayne throws 2 or 3 picks. He looks awful. And I thought Jay was just looking to prove a point. You wanted him? Here he is. You want me to play him? I can play him, but this is the shit you're going to get. So he comes back the following week, and it's New England, and this was Jay's farewell, right? This is his swan song. Like, if I'm going out with my guy, Colt McCoy. All right, so he says, Case, sit your ass down. Dwayne, your ass is grass. Hey, Colt, man, let's go out for old time's sakes. One time, man, for the one time. And Colt goes out there, and I remember this because it was so funny. We give Steven Sims a little jet sweep type reverse action handoff, and somehow he scores on this thing. He has no business scoring. He breaks a couple tackles. Should have got pushed out of bounds. I don't know how he didn't get pushed out of bounds, and he scoots down the sidelines and he scores. We're up 7-0 against the Patriots. Keep in mind, the Patriots won the Super Bowl last year, and that's another thing that I forgot to mention that's a part of the storyline. Washington fans were extremely pissed because Sean McVay took the Rams in just 2 years' time to the Super Bowl. They lost, and they only scored 3 points. However, he took them to the Super Bowl. Meanwhile, we're over here struggling with Jay Gruden. I can't sit here and have revisionist history. I wanted to keep Jay. Jay was winning. But as soon as McVay left, Kirk was gone mentally, so I should have been able to connect the two dots and know that once Sean McVay left, Kirk was not going to stay. So if that's going to be the case, Jay is not going to have a quarterback. Probably need to move on from Jay, but that's nor here nor there. So a lot of Washington fans were having 2020 vision, being that it was hindsight. We should have kept McVay. And so that was in the backdrop as well. But the Patriots won the Super Bowl the year before, and we're hanging tough with them. It's 7-0. And then the Patriots proceeded to score 33 unanswered points and beat us 33-7. and it was at that moment when I said, oh my God, we suck again. And I said, if we don't beat the Dolphins next week, who at the time were winless just like us, and they looked like the worst team in football, but we weren't very far behind. I said, if we don't win against the Dolphins, we may go 0-16. We're that bad. And they dubbed it the Toilet Bowl. That Dolphins game, because at the time it looked like whomever lost this game is going to have the number 1 overall pick. And so Jay gets fired after the Patriots game. And they promote Bill Callahan, who was the offensive line coach, to interim head coach. He proceeds to trash Jay Gruden as soon as he gets the job. And he proceeds to bench Colt McCoy, reinsert Case Keenum. We go to Miami, and Terry has a whale of a day, 2 touchdown grabs, and we hold on for a 17-16 victory. Now, the backdrop of that game is Josh Rosen gets the start for the Dolphins. He sucks ass. We blitz him to death. They can't get anything going. If they make the change to Ryan Fitzpatrick at halftime, we lose the game. If they make the change to Ryan Fitzpatrick before the start of the fourth quarter, we lose that game. They made the switch to Ryan Fitzpatrick, I want to say maybe 1 possession into the fourth quarter, and he blazed us. 2 straight possessions, right down the field, touchdown, including what could have ended up being the game winner pending a 2-point conversion. They decided to go for it. And then the Dolphins, when I hear Brian Flores say that the Dolphins management wanted them to lose and encouraged them to lose, plays like the one that I'm about to describe to you makes me think that there's some truth to that. They run the worst 2-point play I've ever seen a team run, almost as if they were trying to get stopped. The only thing that could have been worse is if Fitzpatrick fumbled the snap or got his foot stepped on under center and falls down on the ground. That's the only way it could be any worse. They throw a wide receiver screen, one of those ones that's supposed to be going towards the goal line, you catch it and just fall in, but it wasn't well executed. They didn't block anybody. The guy catches the ball and there's 3 Redskin defenders waiting on him. That thing had no chance. Then after the game, Dolphins players we didn't even practice that all week. Even in the 2-point offense, even in the red zone, we didn't practice that at all. Why the hell did we run that? It felt like they were trying to lose the game, but I was going to take it. I didn't want to be going down in infamy as an 0-16 team. I don't want any parts of that. So winning that game, it was good just to not be 0-5 or 0-6. But I knew we weren't going to win very many more games. So after that, San Francisco comes to town. That's Kyle's first real opportunity to beat us. and he takes advantage of it, and he rubbed it in. That's the 9-0 shutout. Washington would start a streak of a full month without scoring a touchdown. I did not stutter. I am not joking. It is not hyperbole. We did not score a touchdown in a calendar month. Now, it was only the span of 3 games because we had a bye week also, but we did not score against the 49ers, which they had a dominant defense that year, went all the way to the Super Bowl and had Kansas City on the ropes and let them off the hook. But they came in rain-soaked, wet, FedEx Field, muddy, and they did dives on the turf after they won, slides, mud angels, you name it. They were doing all kinds of shit, sliding, having fun. It was a slip and slide fest. And Kyle encouraged it and then had a nice little speech at the end for this game balls from my dad and all that shit, just to rub it in just a little bit more, just to twist that knife just a little bit more. You get shut out in that game. The next week you go on a Thursday night to Minnesota and you score 9 points in that game. But they finally bench Case Keenum in the second half of that game. Dwayne comes in, and we've been asking all along since the switch to since firing Jay, when are we going to see Dwayne? This season is over. There's nothing to look forward to. When is the young fella going to get out there? And let's see what he can do. And they finally benched Case Keenum in the second half of that Vikings game. We scored 9 points, 3 field goals. And that was the first time we saw Kirk since he left, but that was in Minnesota. So we lose that game 19-9. Never felt like a contest. It felt like the Vikings were almost like they felt sorry for us and they were playing around with us. Like, we know you can't score, so we're not going to really try as hard because you're no threat to us. It felt like they had empathy for us, and I didn't like that. You know, we were the little sisters of the poor now. Teams were like looking at us and laughing. So we don't score a touchdown in that game. Then they finally start Dwayne right before the bye. We all thought, oh, they'll start him after the bye. No, they started him right before the bye against Buffalo. Don't ask me why they picked that game of all games and why they didn't just wait till the bye week. It was coming. I didn't care because we wanted to see him already. But he goes to Buffalo. He's not bad. He's not terrible. They keep it short. They don't do anything extravagant with him. It looks really basic, and it is. And we only score, like, I think 9 points again, 3 field goals. And we lose to the Bills, and we go into our bye week. We come out of the bye, and we got the Jets, and I'm looking at the Jets like food, and I'm saying, hey, Dwayne, this is your opportunity to get off. Let's score a touchdown. We go, the Jets come in, and they throttle us. And we don't score a touchdown, I think, until the late stages of the third into the fourth quarter. And I think it was a screen to Darius Geis that finally got us in the end zone. And you would have thought that was a go-ahead score. Dwayne was celebrating so hard. And then he ended up throwing a garbage time touchdown to add to that. And I think it gave him a little bit of confidence. I think there's a game against Green Bay in there on the road where he didn't play poorly. He just didn't play well enough. There was an interception in there, but he did some really good things. We hung in there, but Packers were too much for us. We lose that game. But we did score a touchdown. You know, there was a touchdown scored. So that was progress being made. And then the unthinkable happened. We won 2 out of our next 3 games, which at the time seemed like impossible. Dwayne gets his first win of his career against the Lions, in which he wasn't in the game to take the final snap in the victory formation because he was too busy taking selfies with the fans. Because remember, when Dwayne got drafted, the league done messed up. So he's out taking selfies with the fans. I didn't care at the time, even though I was like, that's not smart. But hey, I mean, he was excited. He thought the game was over, yada, yada, yada. So everybody made a big deal out of that. I wasn't mad about it. I wasn't glad about it, but I was happy to see the young fella get a win. So I forget who they beat, after that. But they did win another game to get us to 3. And then there were a couple of really good outings for Dwayne late in the season. It started with Philadelphia, right? And we're playing the Eagles, and Dwayne goes off in this game. And he's hitting everything. Terry catches a slant and murks. But at this point, we're like, hey, whoa. Let's not get crazy and start winning games we don't have any business winning. We need to end up with one of these top draft picks. We weren't going to take a quarterback because we had just selected Dwayne, even though if we were number one, I was saying take Joe Burrow. There's nothing to talk about. But, number two gets you Chase Young. So everything after that, I don't want it. I'm good. I want Joe Burrow. I want Chase Young. You can't be out here winning games. So the perfect storm happened the next 2 weeks. You beat or you compete hard. You go down to the wire with the Eagles, but you lose. Dwayne plays well. Gains some confidence. Okay. The next week, I remember that game being one that instilled false confidence in me because Dwayne could not miss in that first quarter and a half against the Giants. It was him and Daniel Jones were putting on a show. They were going blow for blow. And Dwayne was game. And he's hitting everything. And I'm thinking, you couple that with the Eagles game the week before, and he's gaining confidence. Uh-oh. This kid might actually be legit. And then he gets injured. Case Keenum comes in. We get into a shootout with the Giants. Daniel Jones throws 5 touchdown passes, including the game winner in overtime after we blocked a punt to get us to overtime. The Panthers. That's who we beat. That was the other win. That was the Happy Thanksgiving game, right? That was the game that got Ron Rivera fired. You go over there, and Darius Geis goes off. So does Adrian Peterson. And we run it all over them, and we get a late stop. Nate Apple Orchard with some big plays, including a sack there against the Panthers to ice that game away and preserve that game and that win. So that was the third and final win of the season. He had the block punt, did Nate Orchard, against the Giants. So you see him playing in that game, in those 2 games, rather. He doesn't finish the season. That injury ends his season. We get the doors blown off of us in Week 17 versus Dallas. But it brought a miserable season to a close. But there was one thing that we could hold on to. 1, we're getting a new coach. 2, Bruce Allen has got to be fired after this season because now he can't use the crutch of we're close. Not when you go 3-13. When you're 7-9 2 years in a row, and you're coming off of an 8-7-1 season the year before those 2 7-9 seasons, and the year before that you're 9-7 and you make the playoffs. You can use close. But now there's no more Kirk Cousins. Now there's no more 7-9. Now there's no more Jay Gruden. You're 3-13. The bottom has fallen out. Dan distanced himself from Bruce. They weren't hanging together. They weren't thick as thieves anymore. So we already saw the writing on the wall. Bruce is gone. Jay is gone. Hell yes. Hell yes. So it was a disaster of a season. But in order to affect change, it needed to happen. We needed to bottom out. Because anything hovering around 6 or 7 wins would have had Bruce in Dan's ear talking about we're close. Hey, if we just do this or we just do that, we'll get over the hump. Not at 3-13, you can't say that shit. So out with Bruce, out with Jay, and in with Ron Rivera. And that's how 2019 ended. But it ended with hope. Because with Ron coming in and Bruce Allen being out and having Kyle Smith still be here, it felt like maybe, just maybe, we could clean some things up. Maybe get a real GM in here and maybe Kyle Smith would be that for us. And maybe, just maybe, we could turn things around. Ron Rivera chose us. And I didn't think we'd get that quality of a coach. Not with where we sat. But 19 was awful as a fan. It was one of the worst. I was there for 94 when we went 3-13. I was there for 2013 when we went 3-13. Those seasons, maybe 94, but 2013 was more about drama and Robert Griffin III and his knee, and maybe he wasn't ready, and there was a lot of stuff swirling around at that time. 94 felt like, okay, Norv just got here. He needs to get settled in, get him a quarterback, yada, yada, yada. I think we had just drafted Heath Schuler, so you're trying to figure some shit out. This 2019 season felt a lot like 1994. Felt a lot like 94. The biggest difference was that was Norv's first year in 94. That was Jay's last year. We were going to get a new head coach, but you still had a first-year quarterback, a rookie quarterback, in a situation that we would ultimately find out was going nowhere fast. But 94 was rough. 2019 was rough. Okay, for those of you who didn't experience 94, where all we had on the roster was Terry Allen. Like, the rest of the team, I think it was Terry Allen, probably Ken Harvey, and I think Henry Ellert might have been all the players we had in 94. The rest of the team sucked. Like, we were total trash. I had no hope in 2019. None. Getting Chase Young was the highlight of the season. Even Dwayne Haskins and how he finished up the season was positive, but I still wasn't sold. I never wanted him in the first place. And his attitude never jived with me. And I just thought, we're going nowhere fast. So, off to 2020 we went, and I'm glad Ron's here, but I don't know if he's going to be able to make a difference. We'll talk about 2020 and what Ron Rivera was able to do. And so, that's where I leave you, here on the Reign of Terror, chronicling the 23 years of pure hell that Daniel Snyder has put this fan base through. I am your man, Louie T. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.